Welcome to Taverna Friuli Wines, the definitive podcast on wines from Friuli, Venezia Giulia. I'm your host, Wayne Young. Hey, here we are. Sorry about the a little bit of delay there. Hi, Rosella. Welcome for coming in. There you are, Rosella. The room will begin populating right away. So come on in. Terry is here. Terry just came into the room. So yeah, Rosella, I'm definitely going to bring you up on stage. Give us a second here, and we're going to get everybody here to up on stage and ready to talk. Our co-host, Natalie Benlolo, should be here any minute now. I'm going to start pinging in some people. So I'm going to start telling everybody that we are here and ready to go. So just give me a second to ping these folks in. Ben, how you doing this evening?
Good, fresh from the storm.
Fresh, exactly. Yeah, it's already over. So
it's incredible.
Yeah.
We got drenched.
Yeah, we got a little bit wet. And we're going to have some visual aids here that we'll obviously post on the Instagram feed, but we'll bring that in later when it's a little bit safer. Because I don't want you bringing in precious artwork in a monsoon. Yeah. So
no, this
anyway,
I can always slip out if there's an ad break.
Yeah, we can always do an ad break as well. Yeah. Oh, we got Heather. Hi, Heather. I'm going to bring you up on stage right away. So Heather is like a perennial listener. She's like,
okay, cool.
Listener number one.
Good evening, Heather.
All right, yeah, Heather's up on stage. I just invited Gerson up on stage as well, so he's here.
Evening,
everybody. So, welcome to La Taverna. And
grazie per l'invito. Thank you for the
very welcome.
The wonderful invite.
I'm sure Nat's going to be here any second. I just pinged her also on Instagram to let her know that we are on. So she's there. But thank you for taking the time to come. To come to the Taverna. That's always a big deal for us, that people are willing to sort of come and make the trip here to Rizzi, beautiful downtown Rizzi here in just outside of Udine. So before we get started, Natalie is in the room. Hello, Natalie. How are you? Live from London, England.
Oh, good evening,
She's
Natalie.
not in the studio this evening. Natalie here. Natalie Benlolo, my lovely co-host. Thank you for making time and coming in tonight. Nat, how you doing? You there, Nat? Nat doesn't want to talk.
She's ghosting us.
Yeah. Her beautiful picture is here, but she doesn't want to come and talk. So anyway, but I'm sure she'll be here. So, when we get there, we get there. So.
No, it's wonderful to be here. I mean, this is quite a special taverna.
It's only going to get better. This is Grazia di Rabbi. This is his taverna that he completely overhauled just for the show.
The boss.
He's the guy who runs the audio, and then the place is his as well. So it's a special place, and it's gonna get better and better.
No, I love it. It's very authentic.
There's Nat. Nat, how you doing?
Sorry, just learning how to use the app.
There you go. Now you know.
I now know. Hello, my darlings. I'm fine here in London in weird, windy, sunny weather.
What part of London are you in, may I ask?
Yes, hi there, Ben.
Hi.
I'm in northwest London, in a place called Edgware, not too far from Hampstead.
Yeah, I know it.
Where
I remember seeing Edgware on the buses.
Or
maybe on the tube side.
On the tube, on the tube. It was, I think it was one of the district lines that went out to Edgware. But
are you an Englishman, Ben?
No, I am an Irishman.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
I'm a Apologies not necessary, Natalie.
Okay, wonderful.
DOCG, Dubliner, transplanted into just north of Udine. So, Nat, obviously, I don't know if you have any specific question, but I certainly am really interested.
We're going to get to the book, obviously, but obviously I want to talk about Ben and how a guy from Ireland comes to Udi, because this is the same question everybody asks me.
Yeah. And actually, it's actually an important question, because otherwise probably trying to explain the book wouldn't make much sense without this preamble.
Okay.
And because what drove the book is what brought me here.
Okay.
And that's love.
Okay.
So it's overall a love story.
Okay.
So I met my future wife-to-be, not knowing it, in 1997. And I came to Friuli for the first time in 98, summer of 98. And in fact, it was at that moment, the first dinner that I had with my future in-laws, that her dad pulled out a couple of bottles of wine. And the one that struck me most at that time and still lives with me was it's Refosco. And with my, I thought I knew a bit about wine, actually, well, French wines. So I asked him naively, so this Refosco, I mean, it's got a lot of character. It's got a bit of edge to it, really structured. I'll tell you whose Refosco it was, by the way. You'll be interested to know.
Uh-huh.
And I said, I'm feeling a bit of Cabernet Sauvignon. I'm feeling a bit of Merlot. There's something going on. He was looking at me. What are you talking about? This is a Refosco. Okay. No, I mean, it's the name of the grape then. And I went, oh my God.
Okay.
Never heard of it. Actually, that Refosco was Paolo Rodaro's.
Okay. Okay. We were just talking about Paolo before we came in here.
And so it was literally in that moment that I couldn't believe my ignorance. My blissful ignorance. How would I? Why should I know about Refosco or Friuli Venezia Giulia in 1998 as a well-traveled young Irishman? I'd been to Italy many times, but never here. I'd never heard of it. And so it kind of, all of this plays into the story. But in that moment, the idea for the native grapes was born. So the native grapes then that became...
Which is your it's a blog. Instagram handle. Oh, yeah, okay, it's a blog.
It's a blog, and because as the years went by, I obviously I couldn't stop. The curiosity was killing me.
Okay,
and so I had to feed it, and incredibly, I didn't have to go anywhere else other than Friuli to feed my native grape curiosity, because it was just one after another in terms of grape varieties. So. That started me on that journey. That was 98. We actually made a decision. So we got married. We got married here. We then had 2 kids. But we lived in Ireland. And when our kids reached the age, Elisa was 5. And we thought, look, if we don't, it'd be nice for them to have a taste of the Friulano culture. And if we don't go now, the likelihood is we'll never go.
Okay.
With kids and, at that kind of age. So that was a moment that you could actually do it. So we made this family decision. Funnily enough, the global economy collapsed.
So this was
just
around
the year,
2008?
Yeah, it was 2008, 2009.
Okay.
So, basically I was here full time sort of from 2010. Still working in Ireland, but all the time feeding this curiosity for not just the viniculture or the viticulture, but actually, the daily cultural exchange.
Okay,
and everything that's connected with that. So the geography, I find this a very fascinating place. So. When I got to the point, it was like 2015, and there were friends telling me, you're constantly writing notes about, you're constantly tasting wines, you're constantly doing these things. yeah, I mean, you should do something with that. So the native grapes was born in 2015, and as a kind of a thank you to the region, in my own little way, I said I really should do something just a little bit special for Friuli. So maybe I'll have a look at one variety, and I'll study it, get as much information as I possibly can, maybe organize some tastings or something, and write a few articles, put them on the blog, maybe see if a couple of the English-speaking wine magazines would be interested to publish something like that. So that was just this idea, and it was Pignolo, because I thought about everything else.
How did you arrive at that decision?
Well, in a way, the book tells the story actually of how I got there.
Okay.
In the beginning, I would have said that it was an economic curiosity.
Okay.
I'm a recovering economist.
A recovering economist.
Yeah,
I like that. So you're no longer an economist.
No.
But you obviously still battle that problem on a daily basis.
I still fight with
the demons of economics.
Yeah, Trinity College and economic and social studies 4 years back in the early 80s, whatever. I graduated from there in 88. Anyway, that it was still the old world, and obviously my work, my business, how I had been institutionalized. But I found here that there was just there was another way of being and doing that has some kind of a magnetic draw, and so even though it was spurred by an economic curiosity, what actually revealed itself was, an aspect of love, that something very intrinsic, a motivation.
So could you call this book kind of a love letter to Pignolo?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. In fact, I stated it.
Oh, okay. Full disclosure, I have not read the whole book. Yeah. Obviously, you can tell that but I managed to go through some things, and every time I opened the book, I was always sort of glued to the page, and I was, and I got to understand the structure of the book. But as we were discussing earlier, every time I started to read through it, I was always finding these little gems that would come out, and that's really special. And you could tell that there's so much care and love put into the book.
Yeah. I mean, it was, even from the point of view of the book's presentation, from the outside in.
Okay, so there,
What happened? Did I pop out? Nat, am I back? Nat.
Well, I can hear you.
You can hear me.
Well,
yeah.
I can actually see you.
No,
as well.
It seems like something happened. It seemed like we kind of blanked out there for a second. So, yeah.
But we're still recording here anyway.
Yeah, we're still recording. Yeah, but I
guess it'll
maybe we lost the connection. Okay, I don't know. But Nat, fill me in on what happened and how long I was out. So, I got a phone call on my phone. I don't know.
Can I indeed? Well, anybody want to say anything?
Yeah,
because when we can't hear you,
you can't hear us at all.
We can't hear you.
Ah.
Oh, okay. So there's. Hang on a second. Hang on. That's why. Hang on. I don't know how the hell did I get on mute, for God's sake?
No, I have not.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Nat, have you been holding down the fort for me while I've been gone?
Was just asking them if they'd tried Pignolo yet, and you popped back in, so we'll have to hold the answer then.
No, sorry, I have no idea what happened. All I know is that somebody called me on my cell phone, and I reached over to silence the phone, and I must have touched something because something went crazy. So, all right, so my apologies, everybody.
It's Pignolo.
My apologies. I don't know whether or not maybe there's something wrong with my connection, but I don't know. But anyway, here I am. I'm back. So now,
Continue.
where did we leave off? Now, where did we fade out?
A love
Love
the love
story.
story.
Okay, so
so poetic, Ben. A
Oh,
love
thank you.
letter to Pignolo.
Nat, wait until you see this book.
Well, I did have a look online, and
Okay.
it looks like a piece of it's not just what you've written, is it? The way that it looks is that it's a whole package. It's something to
Yeah.
touch and to cherish. It sounds like it's been presented beautifully as well, not just what's inside it.
Yeah, well,
I can confirm this.
Rosella, do you know the book?
oh, hi,
just received
Rosella. Hi,
Hello.
how are you?
Thank you very much for sending the book.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for
I can't wait to start. Well, I just went through. I didn't have a lot of time, unfortunately, but I just went through the book, and I think it's really, really amazing. It's an experience itself. So I think that whoever buys it will be kind of intrigued and will for sure want to try the
Oh,
Pignolo.
thank you. Oh, that's fantastic.
You're
I'm
welcome.
delighted to hear.
Yeah. I just have to. I'm really curious because I really love also the presentation and the fact that it's not really. It looks like it's not easy to read, but it's like something that you have built up while you were talking about how you thought about this making this book. When you got it, you just have the feeling that this is something which was ongoing. I mean, every time you had something, you added something up. And I think you really give the idea.
Well, you know, Rosella, actually, as one of your what would you call them? Fellow citizens of Trieste.
Okay.
She's a journalist. She works with Seminario Veronelli, and her name is Simonetta Lorigliola. I don't know if
I don't know her.
But she has written some books and things. And anyway, she was looking at she got the book and she said, "Wow, I don't really I don't read English. I can speak a little bit, but I'll only be able to sfogliare le pagine, just to leaf through the pages." And I said, "Look, that's fine. Just tell me what you feel. Tell me what you think." And so she got the book. And she wrote to me immediately and said, "I just can't believe it. The first couple of pages, I'm reading your book."
I can understand, honestly.
And I went, "Oh my God!" So she said, "It's the first time it's ever happened to me." And I went, "Oh, that's pretty
because
cool."
you don't expect that, honestly. When I was just looking some pictures on Instagram, or I was looking people who were getting the book, and I would say, "Wow, this is kind of weird because of the package and everything." So I thought, okay. But when I really got it, I said, "Wow, no, I have to do this calm, and because I need to taste the book as well, I guess."
Yeah. Well, I could explain that the whole presentation is it's conceived as a seed. So from the little outer made to measure carton, which is just it's brown,
right?
And there's no title, there's nothing printed on it. So it's the same as any other seed. It looks anonymous. Okay, there is my little stamp, my little logo for the native grapes.
Yeah, but I think you nailed it because I think that while you're talking, it exactly what happened to me. I think that I'm starting something which is quite, let's say, at least interesting. I won't go that far, but I think that it will be an experience, and I think it will be helpful to really to enjoy the wine as well.
Sure.
I've tried some Pignolo, let's say. And honestly, something that always I liked it, and this is why when I saw the first time the thing which was concerned with this wine, I said, okay, I will start learning something about that. And it was I wasn't sure because I was seeing that on Instagram it was written in English, and I was like, so how come that and I would answer I was answering in English. And
Yeah, I noticed
the
that.
answering back was English. I don't get that. And then I started to look for some more information. I said, wow, okay.
Yeah,
So this is really, really interesting.
it's been incredible, the response from Friulani and
Well, I think that-
Italian speakers. You know, so many young people that you know, they've bought an English speaking book and they're reading it, and I know they've read it because when they send me the comments in Italian, their response, or I know they've read it because they write something or they say something, and I'm amazed. I felt, okay, I had no money to do the Italian version. I still don't have
This
it.
is even better. So
I-
you make people just
Yeah.
push people a little bit.
Well, funny thing is in a way, that's what cultivating the invisible is.
Yeah.
We need to find that part in ourselves that has the capacity to understand. My whole reason, the reason for this book, the reason for what I do with the native grapes, is, you know, first to nurture understanding so that appreciation can grow. Quindi parliamo del nutrimento della comprensione per far crescere l'apprezzamento. And so the book, in this case, for Pignolo, it's certainly going to help the discussion about Pignolo, but there is also, it's a multi-story because there is... I didn't leave anything out. I spoke in terms of the culture, the politics, the geography, the geology, the biology, the chemistry, the ampelography, and everything is in there because it's all connected. And
it's all important.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing that we're missing, that we are lacking today, we have so much knowledge, but we have very little understanding. So this book is a book about understanding. It's full of knowledge, but it is actually about helping people to reach a new level of understanding. And from that point, with that understanding, we can begin to appreciate things. We can begin to appreciate what we have. And so this you know, when I think of Ippolito Nievo, when he spoke about Friuli being this the piccolo compendio dell'universo, the small compendium of the universe, he was right, because you know the title, the protagonist in this book is Pignolo, but Pignolo is not an egoist, not an egomaniac. Pignolo is very humble, and this story you can actually transpose to whatever culture, whatever variety, whatever country. It's a universal book. It's a universal story.
And I love how you even start at the beginning talking about even just Italian pronunciation.
Yeah,
you know,
no, that was funny. You know,
that page with, you know, this is how you say pig, you know, and so you're very easily kind of guiding people that it's not Pignolo,
yeah,
it's Pignolo, and even I have a hard time with the nye.
You know, because it came from, I had some friends that came from Ireland on holiday, some Irish, and then there were some Americans as well, and there was a sporting event in Lignano.
Of course. Lignano.
Rosella, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I prepared them before they came. I said, whatever you do, you know, I guess they were winding me up, but they kept it going for the whole weekend. Lignano. And I said, no, look, it'll be the same thing with Pignolo. And so I said, okay, what we have to do is we have to clear that question immediately when the book starts. And so I thought,
and you did it in such a
nice way,
such an easy, nice way, right?
So, yeah,
so not didactic and this is how GN is pronounced in Italian, you know, which every other wine book does.
Yeah,
you know, you're like, this is a pig, and so
and
everybody loves pigs,
and then the onion, and so
exactly.
So you work out the sounds, so the phonetic thing. So then you begin to understand, you know, you begin to understand the importance of language. and because then that's connected to communication. You don't have to know every word. You don't have to know but just enough, and to get started. And
may I
jump in.
Jump
please.
in, Nat. Go for it.
It's very interesting. Everything you're saying is very interesting. And I've always been a massive lover of anthropology, which of course is everything and the interconnection of everything. And we had another writer on a few weeks ago who's written a book called The Northern Adriatic. And again, he's looking at the inextricable connection between history, language, when he looks at the history of the grapes, and and how the absence of I was going to say confines, help, been in Italy too long, borders, the absence of borders. Once upon a time, we separate countries. Just how all of these aspects that you're talking about are fundamental in really understanding something and where it comes from. And when it appears that somebody might say something that they think is ridiculous, when you start to look into the history of it, actually, it's not ridiculous at all, because, so very interesting.
We have conveniently forgotten so much of our history. And we're living, we're actually not living in the present, we're living in the future. And even the future is speeding by. The wonderful thing about Pignolo is that it's the archetypal slow product. It's the antithesis of what we could call an economic wine. It's just not an economic wine. So when I say about the economic curiosity that got me going was I did all my research through the English language, because I was determined to see, what does Google, with Google's eye, what do they see of Pignolo? And because nothing has ever been written about Pignolo basically in English. A couple of little things translated, a few little things, Wikipedia, whatever, but nothing of any significance. It's all in Italian, and it all comes from a very specific viewpoint. So I went even deeper, because I was looking for the kind of understanding that was driving the people to plant it. So I found 15 names, and I thought, that's great. So this will be a little project. Manageable
little project.
I'm on my own, I could do that. By the time when I got through the first sort of 10, I was asking, how many producers do you think there are? And they said, we're probably about 20, 25, no more. So I said, okay, well, I've got 15 names. Can you give me a couple others that might not on the list or whatever? So by the time I got to 33, I realized that I'd gone beyond. I doubled my expectation. I doubled what Google's eye could see, more than doubled it, and I was now beyond what the local producers knew themselves.
Okay.
So when I was at 33, I decided to organize these tastings, blind tastings. So it's this thing that had never been done before, and I the book will explain about where and how and all that I did it. But the word started to get out that this mad Irish guy he's just bananas for Pignolo. Okay. And the next thing is, I found another 11, so I was up to 44.
44.
Yeah, and then I was up to, it just wouldn't stop. People were starting to send me photographs on WhatsApp and stuff. Look, Ben, I was in this place. God, this is never seen that, And so I got to 55, and I just said, this is. It was at that point when this is a cultural discussion.
Sorry, Ben, this is all in Friuli?
Yeah.
So there are 55.
No, there's actually the story keeps going. There's more. But
here you go.
But the thing, because Natalie, I think you mentioned about the anthropology. Funny thing is, about 2 years ago, I came across a book written by an English anthropologist called Patrick Heady, and he had come to the Val d'Agano in Carnia to study what he, at that time, between 89 and 91, what he determined to be the last remaining cultural settlement, alpine cultural settlement, that was still practicing its customs and practices that had existed for the the past 600 years or so. And anthropologists were concerned that this culture was going to be lost. So he came to record it, simply. And so I read the book. The book was called The Hard People. And then one of the amazing things is that when you, this story is totally organic. It's totally spontaneous. And it wasn't created by me. I drove it for a little bit until I realized, in fact, I wasn't driving. I was being driven. And it was Pignolo. That Pignolo had, I hadn't chosen Pignolo. Pignolo had chosen me. And
Wow.
And to even bring me to find this book, you would meet people in Friuli and they would say to you, we are hard, we are closed, a closed people. Many people at the beginning, 5 years ago when I started this little project, they told me, look, Ben, that's a fantastic idea, but sai che siamo in Friuli. We're in Friuli. It won't, at some point you will be derailed. And, but I just carried on. I think the curiosity and the intrigue then passed from me to the producers. And I think they were like, this guy, he really thinks he's going to get somewhere with this. And so in a way, they didn't close the doors. They were open and they were caring and sharing. And okay, they maybe didn't know that their next door neighbor was also a producer of Pignolo. But that suggested to me a lot of things, cultural things. So I didn't want to touch it because it's a very sensitive discussion here when you talk about Friuli and you talk about Venezia Giulia and that story. But the amazing thing is what I found is so much of this, what people in the region speak about today, it's modern history. It's actually since the Second World War.
Absolutely, and without a doubt.
And they feel that it's ingrained and it's been there for centuries. But the beauty is that when you then discover a book by an esteemed anthropologist and reading my own book beside his, I discovered actually what I've just done for the last 5 years was an anthropological study. And,
Fantastic.
And I came to the same conclusions that he did. And I discovered and that's 30 years, more than 30 years apart. And it's quite poetic. It's quite beautiful. It's a bit mad. I'd love to send him a copy of the book. I don't know where he is now at the moment, in what university, somewhere around Europe. But
that's very eloquently put. This one of my students many years ago here said to me that when he was in the army, he had a friend from the south, and this guy had been to Friuli many times, and he said the Friulani are like cement columns.
Yeah.
He said they're tough and strong, but when you start chipping away, they crumble, which I thought was a really beautiful metaphor. And I think what you're talking about, for example, you didn't know your next door neighbor was growing the same grape as you, is very, very interesting and very telling about a lot of other stuff.
Exactly.
But this apparently very tough, somebody called them the anti-commercio, the Friulano is the one that when you walk in a shop and traditionally they don't say, hi, how can I help you?
Kind of the opposite of when we think of the Veneto region, that they are the consummate commercial people, the salesmen, the commerce people, you sort of think of that as
it's exterior though, isn't it?
With the
Friulani,
it's
an
totally
exterior.
It's totally and it is all connected to what I would claim to be at least 2,000 years of constant dominion and submission.
Excellent, yeah,
and
totally agree.
The idea of there's a word that I've heard many times in Friulano, which is sottans, or Sauternes. It depends on whether I hear it from someone in Carnia or someone where. But Sauternes, Robbie's telling me that's okay, which basically means under the thumb, submissive, and having to submit to the rule of others. And I couldn't believe when even up to 1964. The Mezzadri contracts, which were the share cropping contracts that farm labourers had to work with. I mean, they started in medieval times, and they kept going since 1200, 1300.
Wow.
And those
and this was 800-year-old contracts.
And this was 1964.
Wow.
When the Italian government, seeing the drain, because we were talking about this period of the il miracolo economico, which was the arrival of monies after the Second World War because of the Marshall Plan, and it stimulated. I mean, the Italy was just ready. Italy is always ready to explode with life and creativity. It's incredible. It's no surprise that the Rinascimento began here, not France, not Renaissance. Rinascimento was a word in existence 100 years before the French gave it their version, which was Renaissance.
Okay.
And even that word didn't enter the English language until 1837.
Okay.
And when you start to track back all these little things, you have to ask yourself, well, why is it, for example, that the English-speaking world took the French word instead of the original Italian word? And I would just have to say, simply, it's just a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge. Because the relationship between those two cultures was so close, even though it was always populated with love and war. But Italy was always just, or the peninsula of Italy, because it wasn't Italy. It only became the Kingdom of Italy in 1861.
Exactly.
So, I couldn't believe how many people. And so I was taking these little bits of information as an Irish guy that I was picking, and I was giving it to people here in discussion, and was amazed to discover that actually they didn't know. And then it's not surprising. So it all began to make sense. The history that they are living with today is the history of the last 60, 70 years, since the end of the Second
World War. Yeah.
And it's all tied to a big change in economic thinking and economic practice.
Yeah, I always tell people that you have to sort of look at the wine. I mean, obviously there's thousands of years of wine history here. But the real wine, for lack of a better term, industry, or maybe culture, or I'm trying to find the right word for it, is really after the Second World War.
Yeah.
Before that, it was, okay, you had some vines and you had some wheat and you had some trees and you had some this and you had some chickens and a pig, and it was very mixed. And it wasn't until there was this sort of influx of money when you could sort of say, let's concentrate on growing grapes and bottling wine. And that also was connected a lot to the chair industry here. Yeah. A lot of the great winemakers here sort of were tied to that kind of influx of money that came in.
And to be honest, this is where what the book taps into. And this is where it became incredibly personal. This is a really personal book, and because it's also about me. It's in a way semi-autobiographical. I lived this experience. And I'm the better for it. It wasn't easy, but we discovered things about each other. That's like me and Pignolo, and then all the producers, and then in the region there was lots of traffic, emotional traffic, but. I think we have actually reached a point of, or I at least have reached a point of clarity, and it goes back to that whole thing about being the recovering economist. That when everything changed in Friuli, let's call it Friuli Venezia Giulia because it was 1963. Before that, it was, and that's a whole amazing story too. But it clarifies it's clear why people think the way they think now. But that change only happened in the 1960s.
Right. So that needs to be sort of like folded into a few generations.
Yeah, because it happened really quickly. There was this basically like a rush. I don't want to draw an analogy necessarily with, let's say the first time somebody gets a shot of dopamine, or from alcohol or drugs or something like that or whatever, and they just got taken. But everyone was being taken. The world was being driven in a new economic direction, and and that was the economy that I studied at university. And I came out, and I basically was trained as a commercial soldier, so to speak, to work within that system and to make that system work and make it continue to work. The definition where I've arrived now today is actually, I think, quite sweet. That Pignolo is not an economic wine. It's a business wine. The thing
What's the difference?
Well, I would say that I'm pro business and anti economy.
Okay.
And how I would explain it is this: is business is built on need, and the economy is built on want. And the way humanity has evolved for thousands of years up to that point in the 1960s. And then it definitely got switched on in the 1970s with economists like Friedman in the States. They stopped doing business, and business involves people.
Okay.
It's contact.
Right.
And you have to get to know the person you're doing business with, and you can do good business.
Right.
Marco Polo did business.
Because he did it. It was FaceTime.
He didn't do. Yeah, he didn't do economy. Nobody did economy.
Gotcha.
You're making me think of traveling merchants.
Yeah.
Silk Road.
So they had something that somebody else needed, and then when they sold that, they needed something else, and so it was less about because if you think about any time prior to any time prior to the 1940s. There was generally an empire, a dictator, a king, and if they wanted something, they didn't, try and nicely do business with you. They just came and said, "We want your gold, we want your trees, we want your land, we want your silk, we want your whatever." And they just came in, and if you didn't give it, yeah. So they took it. But the normal people did business,
right?
And business is the thing that's missing now. Business is the thing that will bring us forward and will help us in relation to the challenges that we are now facing.
This reminds me a lot of when we talk about, especially when we talk about wines in Friuli. And I have a funny feeling we talked about it last week when we had 2 weeks ago, when we had Ippolito on. And so when we talk about this whole concept of the hand sell.
Yeah.
Right. So you have certain wines that sell themselves, and then you have the wine sell, so the hand sell. So what you need somebody who is going to tell you that you need this. You're not going to go into a restaurant or in a wine store and say, "Can I have a Pignolo?" Well, maybe after this book goes global, everybody in the world is going to be, and it'll be like a global shortage of Pignolo, and it'll all be your fault.
No, but I think if it happens, it's going to happen really slow.
But even when I worked in the wine business, I was selling, wines in a restaurant as a sommelier, people would ask for a certain thing, and it was always the coolest thing when you could sort of bring them something else and sort of bring them outside of their box. So, and that was a FaceTime thing. And I used to always tell the sommeliers and the people who I worked with, and even when I did sales meetings and things like that, it's like the moment you bring something to someone that they've never had before, they're going to remember you, and they're going to trust you because you brought them someplace that no one ever brought them before, brought them something.
Yeah.
And that's business.
And when you just mentioned it there, you were talking about this, let's say that it's the modern term of FaceTime.
Right.
connected to, apps and things like that. That's effectively what this is.
So the portraits in the back.
For me, the concept behind that is face value.
Okay.
And so we would talk about the price of something. So what's the price of that at face value?
Okay.
As in to me,
Right.
but faces have obviously infinitely more value than that.
Exactly.
So I tried to the whole idea with the fact that Pignolo is invisible, the producers are invisible, invisible to themselves. The region is invisible. I'm invisible. I decide, well, I'm going to have to start cultivating the invisible.
Okay. So it's not literally cultivating the invisible as in growing a plant, but it's cultivating this concept of invisibility and
invisibility,
bringing it to light.
Yeah, you could then I can take this thing in any direction anybody wants to go. The economic business aspect is one that I didn't deeply explore in the book, because I wrote this for the beginner's mind.
And you can see that.
Not for the beginner,
Right.
but for the beginner's mind. There is way more. There isn't. I don't know anybody else on the planet within the wine environment that would have this kind of knowledge about Pignolo. I think about maybe Indagata with his work with the native grapes, and he's spent a lot of time in Friuli. But he would have had absolutely no idea about this number, about this the diversity and the depth that exists. And also, I basically lived with this, with this, almost like in commune.
Okay.
With this group of desperate people who don't actually communicate with each other.
Right.
So I became this kind of, I'm like a conduit
You're
for
like
them.
a bridge, yeah.
But slowly but surely, I do believe that I'm creating something that hasn't existed before. And I believe that to be understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
So cultivating the invisible, in one sense, the invisible is understanding. So I'm nurturing understanding,
Okay.
so that appreciation can grow.
Right.
A wine like Pignolo can only be appreciated if it is understood. And what many here would say is, oh God, there's 60 odd of them, 70? It's just chaos. The beauty of this for me, as a recovering economist, is that while the economy would see a great weakness, I see a huge strength.
Huge possibilities.
This is a world of difference.
Right.
And there are two things that we need to continue evolution. And one is color, and the other is diversity.
Okay.
And so that's what these portraits represent. So you see in the background of every single portrait, this is my imagined barcode. It's a DNA code.
Okay. It kind of looks like a barcode, but it also kind of looks like that DNA chart that you find.
And it's done in. So I painted this is the DNA of each individual producer.
No.
So I painted it in.
So you
in
actually
color.
took the actual DNA.
No.
No, but I'm saying,
this is imagined because.
It's imagined. So you didn't actually do a DNA test and then paint.
No.
Okay, because I thought for a second, wow.
No. This is
Okay.
yeah. No, that
But
would be
it's
awesome.
a conceptual DNA.
It's
for you.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Because when you actually look into the background of the portraits, you'll see that there's numbers, there's information that appears
I didn't
with
miss
geographic
that.
coordinates and things like that. So somebody could come along and say, but who is that? And So there's no other indication there. But if we're all supposed to be so savvy with our smartphones and technology, then a viewer should quickly understand. If I just put those coordinates into Google Maps, I wonder what will come up.
What's going to come out? Yeah.
Well,
So
in this case, it'll be Grosvenor.
Okay. Yeah.
So and then literally it's the same so you'll see the details, information that appear, at the back.
And I'll definitely post some of those on Instagram later, and we're going to obviously take a picture with the full size.
Yeah.
And you are the artist as well.
I am.
So,
and this was.
So you're a writer, you're an artist, you're an economist, for me, you're a philosopher. You're a lover of wine.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So
thank you, Natalie.
And all of that goes into the book. I mean, I when we were talking before the show, I was saying, well, do you have a background in writing? Because there were moments when I was going through the book, and I marked one of them. Now, something as simple as the 2 lines of text before you introduce a table of information. Okay. So here we are. We're talking about your different aromas and bouquets and different styles of Pignolo and all the different ages that they have.
Yeah.
And here the top of the page is towing a line along the evolutionary canal. Here with a tabular summary of the aromatic thoughts I have divined. It's beautiful. I loved it. You know what I mean? Any other author about wine would just be like, if we, here are the principal aroma and blah, 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 compounds of the, it would be so boring. And then just those little things that came out. The other thing that really struck me was this whole section about Maslow's pyramid and flow.
Yeah.
And all
that was amazing.
Which I thought was just absolutely amazing. And if you get the book, you have to, make your way through the book, because that's when it really starts to get
that was
hot.
I mean, I have to tell because this is where I wasn't driving this. I was being driven. So it was Pignolo was taking me.
Okay.
I've spent so much time in the vineyards. I have struck up a relationship with the vine. So I it sounds crazy. Some say that this guy, he's the Pignolo whisperer, but actually, vines. There is communication if you're open to it, and I have discovered things that even the great Carlo Petruzzi hasn't yet discovered. Okay. And I have photographic evidence of it.
Okay.
So there's lots of things happening. So I was brought to this whole thing about need and want and speed. How do we correct this? And the fact that all that was written about Pignolo to date was about how humans saved Pignolo from extinction.
Okay.
Humans.
Okay.
And so we are besotted with the human perspective. And I felt, nobody has even ever considered that in the plant kingdom that they would have a perspective. But plants can't talk. They don't talk. How do they? Well, we know now that they can, and they communicate.
Yeah.
There was a fantastic TED talk by a Canadian biologist who was doing studies in a forest in Canada, and using her capacity and carbon isotopes and all the rest of it, she was actually able to prove that a communication network underground exists.
Yes, it's fungus or something, isn't it?
No. This is actually
it's literally between
through the roots
of the trees.
Yeah,
okay.
And
because I remember that there was something about
and there are mother trees, and there are kid trees, and
wow.
and since then, obviously, science has gone, biology and botany has gone wild with studies over the last 5 or 6 years, and they're proving that So I think, and I've heard it from certain other producers I've met over the years, who would speak so fondly of the time that they spend in the vineyard and observing. And as with someone with my background, a businessman. It's like, but I left myself open to it because I really did sense something amazing was happening. Something amazing is happening, and it was instinctual and empathic, and it was in this kind of flow. And I couldn't. When I actually discovered flow, when I discovered that was the closest thing that I could describe to it.
Did you discover flow working on the book?
Yeah, no, I discovered the guy who the psychologist who
came up with the concept.
Right, and he was
if
ahead,
I may,
Nan.
Ben,
Yeah.
you're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Well,
Yes.
there was Maslow was his hierarchy of needs, but I needed to get beyond the transcendental, which was like the tip of his pyramid, the tip of the hierarchy. I was trying to, why are these producers insisting upon producing Pignolo when clearly the economy doesn't want it?
Okay.
Right.
And yet they just wouldn't let it go, and they aren't letting it go. And I felt that it was Maslow that brought me to discover Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow.
Okay.
And which he described as it's the happiest state that a human being can find themselves in when they actually do something just for the pure joy of doing it.
Right. And it's happened to me a couple of times in my life when you've been there, and it's almost like you lose track of that whole track of time.
Yeah.
Time has nothing.
It means nothing.
You don't get tired.
No.
Because you're just so into it and everything, and you're not almost like consciously working.
Exactly.
It literally feels like flow. That's happened to me a couple of times in my job, and it's really.
And he discovered, and he calls it's the happiest state for a human being to find themselves in. So you go through all that. So I recreated his chart, nicely colored in and all that stuff, to match with Maslow's. But yeah, that is what is sitting in behind Pignolo's existence. It's an intrinsic motivation. And that when you are fished by the fisher of women and men, as I call Pignolo, and you experience it, it's an amazing discovery. So, I mean, I dubbed this storytelling animal transplant as an animal transplant story. Me being the animal and Pignolo being the plant.
Okay.
And that we had this two-way communication, which was real. And because I did things that I had never done before. The whole concept of painting these portraits, so you see that it's like 1 meter by 70. It's big piece. Conceiving all of this, how to connect everything, together was just unbelievable. But it was inspired by everything I encountered, everyone I encountered. I couldn't have done it without them.
Right.
So, I simply feel in some way, one producer, very well, said, you are the voice. And I suppose maybe I have become the human voice that I can translate, interpret what it is that Pignolo is seeking to
say,
to teach us.
Yeah. There's that whole part about teacher.
Yeah, the teacher plus the taught equals the
teaching. Yeah.
So the way I see it is that that Pignolo and its custodians, the producers, they're the teacher. At this moment in time, you and I are the taught. But together, we become
The teaching. Okay.
And so it's for all of us to bring that teaching out. And so when I had this, it was another, just one of those things that happened. So many things of this nature happened. I got a phone call in July 2019 to go to the Abbazia di Rosazza. Filippo Feluga called me, and he said, because I was looking, I wanted to have a walk through the vineyard just to see how it was going. It was a hot July. I just wanted to see how Pignolo was getting on. And when I arrived, he said, "Look, we'll leave the vineyard walk. We might do that after, but just come up because he said my niece is here, Laura Feluga, and we just want you to taste a couple of wines for us." So I went up, and they had this barrel tasting of the 15, 16, 17, and 18 Pignolo. Now, this was a moment when, at that point in 2019, Feluga had only commercialized their 2009 vintage. So they put on the table in front of me these 4 vintages from 15 to 18 and asked me to taste them. And I just was like, I was blown away. They're fantastic wines. Now, they might decide not to release them, but I can't believe that. Interestingly, in the meantime, they have just released their 2011.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, long story short, at the end of the tasting, I was kind of blown away by it. And Laura, who had just come back from the States, I think, or somewhere, speaks English wonderfully. She asked me, "Ben, in 3 words, how would you, what does Pignolo mean to you?" And I went, oh my God. At that stage, I'd written about 120,000 words. I'd driven 40,000 kilometers over the past sort of 3.5 years. And I was going, "You want 3 words?"
Wow.
And, but she did me the greatest favor because, and I wrote there's a little piece in the book about it to explain.
I actually marked it too, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Because I knew that would be one of those questions that an interviewer, in the economic world, would ask. It's always, in 3 words, sum it up. Sum up the last 5 years of your life.
Sounds kind of like an interview question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
where do you find yourself in 5 years, Mr. Little?
So anyway, so I did, and the 3 words that I came up with were to describe a Pignolo is instinct, empathy, and flow.
So can you tell me why you chose those 3 words?
Well,
or does that reveal too much about the book?
Well, it not necessarily, but what I would say is that if you go to the, what page is it? It's 257 or something like that. Just towards the end, yeah. 252.
I know I marked it. Yeah, here it is.
252
There it is.
in 3 words.
Instinct, empathy, and flow. Yep.
So, and then you go on just 2 more pages to 3 more pages, whatever, 257.
Okay.
Where one of the things that I discovered in all the difficulty that I had in trying to communicate with my pidgin Italian 5 years ago. It's improved a little bit, but it's difficult to have a deep conversation with somebody in Italian if you don't have all the vocabulary. And so I found it, there was this kind of barrier. And so language became really important. And I began to see how important language was culturally speaking here. So how the Friulano language is important, how the languages in the Slovenian culture are very important, right on the border with Slovenia, how dialects that would be spoken in Carnia, and it's really important. Identity is like everything. And I am fortunate because being Irish, I know that this discussion is very close to our hearts. Language is also very important to us. And so I created this new language, and the language is called Deep Sign of Love.
Yeah, that's the page, yeah.
And so when you I probably need a light behind this. I don't know if you've got a light here or whatever, but I don't know if you can see it. But when you have a light behind...
Oh, so that's why it's printed this way.
Exactly.
Hang on.
It reveals itself to you. That...
I am intrigued.
Yeah, I'll send a
I'm
picture. You see
intrigued.
that? You see that? Isn't that amazing?
So you see, when you look at the page like that, and people have said to me, well, why is it spelled like that? That looks, that looks kind of odd. But when you turn the page, and if you have some little bit of backlight,
There you go.
secret-
He's got the right picture. Definitely going to put that up on Instagram later on.
it reveals itself.
That's
to you.
amazing.
And then as I say, on the page over, so I wrote that kind of little poem, and Karen Marzaro, I have to mention, I cannot not mention Karen for her graphic work, because she was just immense. She's a fantastic graphic designer, but a wonderful artist and a wonderful thinker, and I was absolutely blessed to have her. She completely understood what I was trying to do in all of the madness. She just got it, and she translated. She did some amazing things, of which this was one. It was a concept we worked on, but so yeah, when I wrote the piece about what deep sign of love is.
Okay.
And she said, well, we'll just take that piece of paper and we'll just put it in, just the way you wrote it.
Yeah, why not? Exactly.
And so again, it's all that kind of personal touch, and like even down to, I mean, you will find some certain quotes, but to kind of top and tail but the significance of love and it being a love story. I found this wonderful quote from Paulo Coelho, the Brazilian author, when he wrote, "One is loved because one is loved. No reason is needed for loving." And I feel that is connected, part of the intrinsic motivation why people like Joschko Gravner and Michele Moschioni and the Zamov family and the Felugas and Stanko Radikon and today Sasha and all of the producers like Paolo Rodaro. I can't check 65 of them.
Of course not.
I could, but we'd be here till midnight.
Ronchi di Chala, which we're drinking at the moment.
Absolutely. That concept of love is, it's deep, and it needs to be understood. They actually also need to, I think, understand it. It's very difficult to in a flash.
Ben, may I say,
Yeah,
because
do.
unfortunately I'm going to have to leave you guys a little sooner than usual this evening, but it's interesting because part of the work that I do is to bring people into wineries, into the whole space, and it's always about the love. I mean, the wine grower and his grape. It's interesting hearing you say it all, the way that you're saying it. You seem like almost like a prophet. if I could, be a bit poetic myself. But
yes,
yeah,
please do. You know what I'd say? The words that are just, unfortunately, they're trotted out. This is connected to language, okay? Mm-hmm. And so, and it's not just in Friuli, it's the world over, that words like passion and tradition are, overused, abused, they're not felt. Then they're, there's no depth to it. There's just one simple word that actually I think we all understand, and that is love. I think people are reluctant, perhaps, to use the word love because it's perhaps connected to what would you call romantic love?
Yeah, especially in the English language.
Yeah.
It's
But platonic love, you know, it's another angle. You know, the fact that I did all these paintings and illustrations and things like that for the book. I wanted it to be personal. I didn't have a budget for photographs, so I thought, well, what can I do? What can I do to authentically express what I feel? Now, people can critique my art and stuff like that. That's fine, but I felt it was necessary for me to enter the field that the wine producers are in every year when they release their next vintage. You know, they put everything into it, and then some critic slags it off with little thought and little care for the effort that and the love that was put into it. Mm-hmm. So I felt I needed to do something. I needed to go just beyond the words. I needed to really put myself in. So in essence, this book is my Pignolo reserve. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So it's 5 years of work and waiting and tears. There were many tears,
okay.
But there were many tears of joy. I could recount some amazing things that happened, experiences. Encounters with certain producers. Some of them are actually recounted in the book, but the ability to express love is something that is desperately needed in the world today, and love will make the world go round. The economy won't.
Okay.
Business will, and business is very closely connected to love.
It's a relationship.
Yeah,
Business is a relationship.
And
economics is just numbers.
Yeah, and that's what we've lost is we have lost, you know, contact with each other. So our human to human relations are suffering, and our, you know, the animal kingdom to the plant kingdom relationship isn't going too good either.
No.
And, you know, to be honest, we wouldn't be here without them.
Of course not. No.
You know, the fact that we breathe, the beautiful air we breathe, is thanks
because of plants.
to them.
Yeah.
And the food and the fruits of their endeavors. So we need to change how we look at things. And I remember when I brought the producers together in 2019, thanks to Silvio Yerman, he gave me his conference center. I have no idea how I managed that, but it happened.
You did it,
and got them there. And I spoke to them about this thing. There's a well-known, let's say, psychologist, Dr. Wayne Dyer. And I remember one thing that he said. You know, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. And in a way, culturally speaking, that's all we need to do in Friuli. But if they keep thinking and keep saying to themselves, non siamo capaci, siamo stupidi, siamo duri, siamo chiusi, then nothing will change.
Yeah.
Now, it's just an expression of love. It's difficult at first. But, you know, once you break that ice, it's amazing what
you can do.
I think, Natalie, you said it earlier on, that thing about the pillars, and that, you know, when you kind of chip away, all of a sudden, there is so much love in Friuli, Venezia Giulia. You wouldn't believe it. And it just needs to find its voice and be expressed and have, you know, the words, the language to convey it. And that's where the deep sign of love comes in.
All right.
Instinct, empathy, and flow. 3 words.
Beautifully put.
3
Beautifully
words.
put.
Oh, thank you.
So I just had Ghislaine come up on stage, who is someone who is often up here. So I thought maybe she might have a question. Elaine, did you want to ask Ben a question? You've been here for a little while. I don't know if you had something that you wanted to say.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you, Wayne, for the invitation. And
Hi, Ghislaine.
it's a nice it's a beautiful talk, and I'm enjoying listening to it.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, and I did not really have a question, but you were talking because I didn't hear the whole conversation because I was still working, and then I
Okay.
said, "Oh, I missed."
Well,
I
the
missed
most
the
important
room.
thing you can do, Ghislaine, is
Yes.
get Ben's book. You
Okay.
have to, because when you see the book, everything will understand. And obviously, when you have the book, and then we publish the podcast, and you sort of go back and listen to the whole talk that we've done, everything will be much clearer.
Okay.
So-
Well, about Friuli, a few years ago, there was this campaign, at least in Holland, called Friuli and Friends.
That's
And
right.
that was a very nice program. We organized a tasting with Friuli and Friends in Amsterdam
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of publicity for Friuli wines.
Yeah, there was a very big budget made available after the decision by the European Union to
change the name.
prevent the use of Tokai.
Tokai, yeah.
Tokai Friulano. So it was banned. So from 2007, in Friuli, they had to introduce a new name for the wine, and so between various meetings and decisions, it was finally decided to call Tokai just Friulano. And so they had a very sizable marketing budget, and they started. The funny thing was that many of the producers at the time didn't like the name Friulano, and they also didn't like the fact that Tokai had been taken away from them. And so there was a division. Superficially, it all looked great, and there was, as I understand it, a marketing agency, from outside the region was brought in to develop this whole concept, Tipicamente Friulano and Friulano and Friends. And so there was lovely graphics and illustrations, and they organized these international wine tastings, like the one that you experienced. And superficially, it was successful. But it actually, in Friuli, it just didn't work. And now that whole concept is gone. And I feel the reason it didn't work was because it came from outside. It was an idea that was presented by an outsider. It wasn't the actual authentic voice of the Friulani. They hadn't yet come to terms with the loss of Tokai, and they were being pushed out into the marketplace with Friulano. And you can understand the anguish and the upset, and so they were doing business, they were making money. They weren't actually doing business,
Right?
And it was just the name was out there, the presentation was out there, and so the tastings were great. I was on a couple of those tastings in the UK, and they were very well received. But unfortunately, the producers themselves, I could see in their body language that they weren't.
They
weren't into it.
They didn't believe it.
Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah,
And as
it was sort of almost kind of like a suit that was put onto them.
Yeah.
They measured the body, but they didn't make sure that they felt comfortable.
They didn't measure the
inside.
mind.
They didn't measure the mind.
They didn't measure the mind. They didn't test the emotional impact. And the way it's been, the way it is now, everybody thinks, well, you just throw some money at it, it will work. But actually, that doesn't fix emotional problems.
Right. I wanted to just take a step back and talk about Pignolo, about the wine a little bit, because we're more than an hour into it here, and we're gonna have to wrap it up pretty soon.
Yeah, no, I was kind of wondering how long this was going to go on.
Well, I mean, maybe we'll make this a two-parter, but you're definitely going to come back.
Oh no, I will come back. I mean,
And what we're going to do, and the idea that I really, really like was that what we were talking about before the show was coming in and doing a show with Paolo Rodato, maybe in Italian, but we'll figure. But one thing that really caught my eye when I was going through the book in these last few days was this thing that you wrote, because whenever people talk about Pignolo, even when you talk with winemakers and enologists and stuff, they always call Pignolo difficult, right?
Yeah,
even the name means fussy, right? It means particular.
Yeah.
Kind of.
So they say.
So they say, right?
Yeah.
And then this quote really caught my eye, and it says, Pignolo is not a tannic bomb in need of dismantling. I love that, because I've always thought of Pignolo as a tannic bomb.
And unfortunately, a number of leading opinion leaders, let's say, that was the experience that they obviously had, and they conveyed that publicly. So that then became the nom de guerre, that describes Pignolo.
Right.
It's a tannic bomb.
Right.
It is under certain circumstances.
This one that we're tasting is not.
No.
At all.
And it's to do with equilibrium. It's to do with maturity. It's to do with balance. I could put 4 or 5 young Pignolos on the table. And when I say young, I'm not saying that the wine is young, but that the fruit that made that wine was from a young vineyard.
Okay, so you're saying that the age of the vines is key.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I wouldn't criticize those for saying what they said. But when they said it, and the wines that they said it about, I can tell you that they were talking about Pignolo kids.
Right.
They were judging Pignolo kids as adults.
Yeah, and that's another part of the book that you meant Pignolo kids.
That's because essentially the economy has forced them to deliver information and knowledge to the market in a particular way. And so if you're talking about like Barolo or Chianti Classico, Gran Selezione or Brunello di Montalcino, or you're talking about Burgundy or Bordeaux, where, vineyards might have a certain age and the wineries have a certain experience. Remember, the people who planted Pignolo, there was no guidebook. Nobody knew anything. And
it was all basically hearsay and tradition, and
it was just pot luck.
Yeah, the pot luck.
The best one was, Girolamo Dorigo, when he said to me, he said, I planted, and he said, I knew straight off that, I was going to have to wait for 10, 12 years at least before, it would happen. And in a conversation I had with him, strangely, I was giving him some information, and we happened upon the idea that 15 is the magic number. And so when I go tasting wines, Pignolos from vineyards that have reached 15 years of age, it's amazing the difference.
Okay, so does it literally like a switch that flips almost?
Yeah, and
no kidding.
And this is blind. This is blind stuff.
So in a blind tasting, you could say, no, this is under 15. This is over 15.
It's just a vibration. It's a chemistry. It's a soulfulness. It's a teenager. It's a maturity. You're reaching a point of maturity. And so you could say that a Pignolo. The common thing that is said, it would have to be at least 8-10 years, have to be. That isn't.
It's 2015.
That's 2015.
Yeah,
but there's a reason behind it. That they planted in 2003.
Okay,
so that's the fruit of a 12-year-old Pignolo vines.
Okay,
so they're on the money. If you've tasted I've tasted their 16.
Okay.
And I
have.
remember tasting the 2018. These are like during fermentation. I can guarantee you that stuff that's going to come out in the next 5 years. I mean, the book is actually way in advance. If you think that my what I call the Anno Zero is the 2016 vintage.
Okay.
Because that's
Anno Zero for this book being when you started tasting these wines. Okay.
So it's 2016. That was the first year of when the project kicked off, with no intention of writing a book or doing any of this. It was something an awful lot simpler. But 2016 is Anno Zero because the majority of Pignolo vineyards were planted by 2000, 2001. So in 2016, they're pretty much all 15 years of age.
Okay.
Now, as you go back in time, you start losing producers because they hadn't planted. So when you're talking about vintages from, let's say, early 2000s, you might find 20. And then if you go back into the 90s, all of a sudden you're shrinking down to, you'll find basically 8 producers that would be able to put, 25-year-old, 30-year-old Pignolos on the table if they still had them.
Okay.
So the book is actually about the future. It explains the past. It tells us where we are.
But it
tells us where we're going.
Yes.
And it tells us when to expect it. Like if you think Fulvio Bressan's Pignolo 2016 won't hit the shelves or the tables of any restaurant around the world till at least 2030.
2030.
The same for Joschko Gravner's Rosso Breg. It'll be 2030. Radicon, if they follow their same, pattern, it will be, 2028, 29.
So what are they marketing now?
They're Joschko's on the 2007.
2007. Okay.
Fulvio's on the 2004, and Radicon's on the 2009.
Oh yeah, younger.
Yeah,
younger one. Yeah.
And this
Such
was
a baby.
This was a really, really strange thing. So we live, and as do they. We're all in this region that, economically speaking, has been talking about white wines, Friulano and Friends. All the money, any investment money, has been pumped into promoting Friuli for white wines, because white wines, you sell them every year, you generate a flow, but not a cultural flow, not an artistic flow, but a cash flow.
A cash flow, yeah.
And yet, in this region, all of a sudden, unbeknownst to everybody, in the shadow, there are over 65. Well, there's now over 7. I speak about 65 producers with possible other 9, but now they're actually they're materializing. So we're over 70, 75 producers, unbeknownst to the region, unbeknownst to themselves. And I discovered this amazing thing that with 6 producers, they already had naturally reached a 10-year aging cycle in the cellar. So they're raising their Pignolo for 10 years in the cellar before commercializing it.
Okay.
So that includes, that's Bressan, Gravner, Radicon, Adriano Gigante, Conte d'Atimis, Maniago, and Le Vigne di Zamo. Now they reached 10 years without either of the others knowing it. It's just natural.
Okay.
Now then,
that's what the wine needs. It's what the wine requests from
This is the teacher.
Okay.
Plus the taught
is the teaching. Yeah.
Now we've got, so next year in 2022, already Michele Moschioni, Silvio Yerman, Oliviero Visentini have told me that they will be releasing their 2012s having cellared them for 10 years. So within a short space of time, and we've got a bunch like Paolo Rodara's already at about 8 or 9 years, just naturally. He's just got there. And when you get there, it means you don't have to stretch or force yourself. Like Adriano Gigante is releasing a 10-year-old reserve Pignolo every year now since 2009, his 2009 vintage. So he's on 2010 at the moment.
Okay.
But with all the other vintages he has, there is, to my knowledge, on planet Earth, no other winemaking region where producers have, independent of each other, reached a form of agreement.
Or like consensus. Yeah.
It's this consensus.
Almost like a standard.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, we know that you need 10 years.
Well, it's...
And this is strange coming from a region like Friuli where everybody is super individualistic.
Mm-hmm.
I do my way, you do yours your way. Okay, so nobody wants to copy anybody else.
And they're not copying each other.
But that is what Pignolo teaches us, that it needs 10 years.
Well, it's not
and
that,
15-year-old vines.
Well, it's not that it actually needs it. It's not prescribing like opinion leaders have said that it needs.
It needs, okay.
It doesn't need it. And this...
Yeah, this is obviously...
This it's only five and a half years old because it's 2015. So
right,
clearly doesn't need it if it's nurtured,
right, handled in a certain way.
If it's understood, it doesn't need it. They have made that individual decision, and these are all individual decisions. So there's no consortia, there's no discipline.
Right. Yeah. There's no code.
But there is.
But it's not written.
And it's not written. And this is what I call the raro, il pignolo raro.
Exactly.
Which is a discipline that just is unwritten, but it exceeds everything. I mean, Brunello di Montalcino Riserva is 6 years. I know Emilio Pepe, with his Montepulciano d'Abruzzo, he cellars for 10 years. But he's the only one in his region that does that. Nobody else does. So there will be perhaps individual producers in Montalcino or in Piemonte in Barolo or making Barbarescos or wherever that might hold a vintage for a particular period of time. But I would contend that as a discipline, they don't. And if you look for it, there's nothing written about it. So maybe they have some, maybe they retain some, but that's not what they're doing here. They're gone way beyond that. They're 4 years beyond that in a white wine region. And they've each done it individually.
They've come to that conclusion on their own.
Yeah. So what is and because that works for them.
Right.
And the one thing they have in common is Pignolo. So who's driving the bus?
Is it us or is it Pignolo?
That's the question.
That is the question.
That's and my experience is that it's two-way traffic.
Okay.
I believe that they
so
equally,
we need to listen.
We need to listen.
Yeah, we need to listen.
I liked that comment from what was the last lady?
Ghislaine.
Yeah. Ghislaine, I loved your comment because just in response to what
You're welcome.
What Wayne said there, we need to listen. That was the most beautiful thing that you said. You said, I've just been listening.
That's what we need to do.
And I love that. And I suppose I should probably listen now. I've been talking too much.
No, I think what we need to do was, there aren't a lot of people here. My favorite ex-wife is listening. She just popped in, so I want to say hi to Vanessa.
Hi, Vanessa.
What I did want to ask you is, please, and obviously the people who are listening, but also when the podcast goes up, where can we get your book?
Well, there's one address. There's one place. There's a couple of places locally in Friuli, but the one place where it will find its way to anywhere on the planet is Simon Wolf's online bookshop. Simon Wolf, the famous
orange wine maniac.
Yeah, he's incredible, and he's about to publish a new book on Portuguese.
Yeah, Foot Trodden. Yeah, with Ryan.
Yeah.
Know them both really well.
Well, Simon was my editor.
Ah, okay. I didn't know that there was a Simon connection there.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Simon, we actually met on Mount Etna. We met on a volcano, and it was when I went to Mount Etna for the Pignolo project. And it's recounted in there. And we just struck up an immediate friendship. And last year, when it was coming to the point where I should be printing the book, finishing it, he contacted me. He was a couple of questions about his next project. And he said to me, so how's the Pignolo book going? And I said, yeah, it's great. It's basically done, you know. And he said, promise me. He said, you got an editor, didn't you? And I said, unfortunately, no. I didn't have the budget. And he went on for about 3 or 4 minutes, insisting, just, you know, steal the money, sell yourself, you know, but
Get an
editor.
Yeah.
And it reached the point where he was so insistent. I just said, well, why the bloody hell don't you do it then? And I thought just to
shut him up.
Because I don't know, I felt it was a bit low ebb. And he said, I was wondering when you were going to ask me. And it was just...
So he tricked you.
It was a beautiful moment,
Okay.
a really beautiful moment. And I don't think I'm not indebted to him, but I respect him hugely. His input was fantastic. His professionalism is incredible, but his empathy, and he loved it. He loved the book so much that when it was finished, he said, "I'd love to sell your book in my shop."
Okay.
And so themorningclaret.com
Okay.
is his website.
Okay.
And his shop is there. And I am truly honored to be the only non-Simon Wolf
book on
his,
Simon Wolf.
Yeah.
Okay. So The Morning Claret.
Themorningclaret.com.
Okay. I will put that on. I'll put that on.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you can get to him through Twitter, through Instagram.
Yeah.
It's pretty much always, Simon Wolf. But themorningclaret.com.
Ghislaine,
Yeah, I have a question.
go ahead.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up soon, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Just of course, I also know Simon. He lives
great.
in Amsterdam.
Yeah, that's
I live
right.
in Leiden, so it's very, very close. I know Ryan as well.
Great.
So it's a small world. It's a small.
It is
world.
a small world.
The wine world is a small world, yeah.
Yeah, the world is small, and the wine world is even smaller. But I was looking you up on the internet,
Yeah.
Ben Little,
Yeah.
and I don't really find you. How is that possible?
Because I'm invisible.
But that's not good public relations for yourself. I'm a PR lady.
Yeah. Well, you see, everybody has a beginning, and
Yes.
as I say, it's a book of beginnings. This is only the beginning.
Yes, I know. But
so-
what you could do,
Yeah.
well, just a small advice,
Yeah.
free small publicity advice,
thank you.
is why don't you make a LinkedIn page of yourself with the proper...
Well, I suppose. I mean, that's if people use LinkedIn, but I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter.
You have 2 Instagrams, don't you?
I have 2
You have
Instagrams.
Planet Pignolo, which deals mostly with the book.
Which is exclusive to Pignolo.
Pignolo. And then you have
the native grapes.
The native grapes, yeah.
Yeah. So it's slowly...
Yeah, I see you on
The native,
Instagram.
yeah, the native grapes.
But
would be
then
the-
you don't have a very good photo of yourself.
And,
no,
and
because
he's a very handsome man, so he should have
Oh.
a photo of himself. Robbie was taking pictures of him at the beginning of the podcast and sending it to all his lady friends. I know he's
right.
married, but all of his lady friends are like, "Yeah, introduce me to this guy, Justo, Robbie."
Maybe I'm being too self-deprecating. That when it comes to Pignolo, it's not about me. It's about the vine, the grape, and the producers that are doing all the hard work. So it's about them. It's not about me.
Yeah, it's
And
true. But
then-
everybody wants to know who wrote the book. Also
Yeah.
when you do business with somebody,
Sure.
if you can't find somebody on LinkedIn or whatever, and you can't find a good photo, then I immediately think, is this person trustworthy? Now, you are in this podcast with and on this clubhouse room with Wayne, so I know you are trustworthy.
Sure.
But it's just, it's free publicity advice.
Yeah, no, it's a very. Thank you so much.
Ghislaine, you don't know. I only invite riffraff on this show. Only the worst people come on this podcast.
Yeah, I only spent 5 years
So he's
researching
a scoundrel. So
this unknown grape in an unknown region to write a book that nobody would ever want to read, because honestly, this is the book that nobody would ever have written.
No, it's
Because
absolutely true.
The only way to write this book would have been to spend the 5 years. I've lived here all of those 5 years. It's not like I came for 2 weeks in the summer, each for 5 years consecutively. I've been here for 365 days a year, except for the leap year last year. So, this has been full on. I've lived and breathed it. I don't. There's just it. It would be impossible for anybody else to have written the book, recorded this story the way that I have. And as I say, it's more than just the writing. It's the whole project behind it, the art and this concept of the invisible. In a way, I'm actually happy. I like the idea that it's difficult for perhaps the public relations field to cope with this, because you really. I'm not saying you, but I say that like as in the plural sense, or I
understand
the industry. The economy has to understand how things actually should work, how we left the evolutionary path, pretty much in a big way since the 1960s. We were leaving the path from about 260 years ago with the advent of the Industrial Revolution. Prior to that, we were evolving in pretty much the same way for, a couple of thousand years. But yeah, there's a great economist called Manfred Max Neef, and obviously he has a Germanic background on his dad's side, but he was born in Chile. And he was a professor of economics in Berkeley University and so on. He's famous for having written a book called about what he called barefoot economics. And I would highly recommend looking him up. So I referred, he's another one of these people that came to me in a Pignolo dream. I don't know how the hell I ever got to encounter his work, except that there's just this common factor in everything, and it's Pignolo. So you begin to reach a point of thinking, hang on a second, something I don't understand is something that I need to understand. Yeah. And so it's not about knowledge. In a way, I don't mind that people don't know me. In fact, I think that's in one way an altruistic advantage.
So it's not about you.
It's not about me.
Yeah.
It can't be about me, because if it's about me when I'm gone to the other side of the universe, who is going to carry this on? It's about those who are waiting in line to be born.
Right.
So this, the story has to be understood before it becomes known. It's the idea of the horse before the cart. Whatever the metaphors are that people use, I think what helped us to reach this point in our evolutionary cycle was the ability to understand things and then interpret and then create value from that point. We know the price of everything and we know the value of nothing.
Right.
And, Oscar Wilde was talking about this, in the late 1800s, and how right he was. So we don't have to go back too far to find the right path. But it's certainly, as Manfred Max Neef said, one of the most beautiful things, one way to perhaps conclude this little point is, he said the greatest challenge we face today is not the economy, it's language. That's the greatest challenge we face. Because everything from a declaration of love to a declaration of war is conveyed through language.
Through language, yeah.
Now, if we learn to embrace a new way of thinking, if we learn to add the word love, sounds really corny, perhaps.
Yeah, it does. But
we need to do something.
right.
It's quite clear, because if we keep following the same economic path, I can tell you where we will be in 10 years, in 20 years, in 50 years. And one doesn't have to accept it from me.
And it's not good.
No, it's not good. It's not good. So we really do need to change the way we look at things. And when we do, the things we look at will change. We need to change our language, the way we express ourselves, because that then will help us to understand. We'll be able to nurture that understanding. We'll be able to grow appreciation and discover real value. And that's what, for me, in so many different ways, Pignolo represents, is a value that we, in general, nobody understands at the moment.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, I would say, one part of me says, I would love to say, well, yeah, I will probably do something on LinkedIn, but I think LinkedIn can wait. and I there are lots of things that I can do. There's lots of things that I'm doing at the moment, and it's wonderful because it is all invisible, but you wouldn't believe what's actually going on underground. And so when I say to people, like, welcome to the Pignolo Underground, this is a movement. It's like, I feel it's like the beat movement in the late 1950s in California, the Jack Kerouac and...
well, count me in.
And
that
when it finally reaches the surface, when it surfaces, it will be magical. Be magical for everybody who is involved. Not just, I'll be great to. I'll be just happy out. If something like that happens in my lifetime, fine. But if it happens in 100 years' time, I don't mind. I think about writers like Nievo. Ippolito Nievo, that his book was published 7 years after he drowned, so he never knew
that his book got published.
No, he never knew.
Right,
he didn't know that he then became considered the greatest writer of the Risorgimento.
Okay,
he was a young guy; he was only 30, but he didn't know.
He didn't know,
but he left something
right
that then other people could carry forward, and so. That's really why the book is even constructed in the way that it's constructed. Why it's bound the way that it's bound.
Exactly.
Because it was done to remind the reader of how modern history, since medieval times, has been brought forward by books that were made like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And the spine of the book, which is exposed, which if you look at some of the photographs, you'll see that it shows the stitching.
Right, exactly.
There's only one thing. Raymond Bradbury wrote the book Fahrenheit 451, and famous book, and it was the significance of the title was that was the temperature that paper burned at.
Yes, exactly.
That's the only thing that will destroy this book.
Okay.
To be quite honest, it may look weak, but it's incredibly strong. But it's to remind people that actually before the advent of this form of book binding, history was carried forward in scrolls, pergamene, and then before that it was carried through in stone carvings and clay tablets for thousands of years.
Right.
So we at the moment we have this whole kind of social media thing, the whole tech age thing, everything's gone digital. This book has a much greater chance of surviving the next 200 or 300 years
than
a digital,
than everything that's online,
than a Kindle.
Than your Kindle. Exactly, is exactly what I was going to say.
So, and that's not to say that I won't do a Kindle version.
Of course.
But
as long as the Kindle version is as beautiful as this one, then yeah, I think you can.
And
do
this
it.
one's it's already in the main library in Udine.
Okay.
In the Biblioteca Ioppi. They have a couple of copies, so they're going to look after it well.
No, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Ben, we got to wrap up.
Yep.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
insight and your philosophy and your
thanks for all your
prophecies and everything. Really, it's been a real pleasure
all
listening
the people
to you
who tuned in as well. It was great.
Not many of them are left. There were a few.
Rosella.
Rosella's still here. Rosella's still here. Ghislaine is here.
Ghislaine, thank you so much.
Nat had to run out. She had finished
Thank
her.
you.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks so much. It was great.
Thanks for spending time with us. I hope you enjoyed. Ben, thank you so much for being here. This is not the last time you're going to be on the show. We'll be here again because,
we hardly touched on anything.
I know. We have a lot more to talk about, and you're absolutely fascinating, so I can't wait to have you back. So thank you very much. All right, guys. Thank you very much for being here, and we'll see you next week on La Taverna.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Hey, I want to thank everybody this evening for coming. Thank you for listening. I appreciate Natalie Benlolo, our co-host, Rob Milani, our sound guy. Follow me on La Taverna Friuli on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram at Wayne Grape. And you can find this awesome music on YouTube at Beat Ambassador. Finishes with an A.